You can always tell when someone's lying, if you've lived with them long enough. I could tell with my wife, Janelle. The way her smile would stick for half a second too long. The way she'd touch her necklace when she was bluffing. The way her voice would go all sing-songy when she was about to manipulate someone. At one point, I used to admire that about her. She had this uncanny way of getting what she wanted without ever raising her voice. A walking charisma bomb. She could charm a TSA agent into waving her through with 2 extra bags and a full water bottle. That same charm got her cast on America's Perfect Parents, a network reality show that billed itself as part parenting challenge, part social experiment. In reality, it was just messy people in nice houses competing for clout while producers stirred the pot and America watched. When Janelle got the call, she acted humble. "Oh, I don't know if I can do it, Ben. Reality TV? Me." But I knew the second she said it, she was in. What I didn't know was how far she'd go, or what she'd say to our kids to win. The first sign something was off came a week into filming. I wasn't part of it. I was the ex, which in TV language means dead air. I'd moved out 9 months ago after we finally stopped pretending we were still a team. No big blow-up. No cheating. Just slow erosion, like a coastline giving in to the sea. We'd agreed on joint custody, week by week. Janelle had the kids during shooting, which I didn't fight. Honestly, I thought it'd be fun for them. A chance to do something different. But when I picked them up the following Sunday, I noticed it. First, it was small. My daughter, Emily, 10 going on 30, asked me at dinner, "Daddy, do you ever think about the impact of your tone?" I blinked. "My tone?" "Yeah," she said, flipping her fork like a food critic. "It's just your energy sometimes. It's a little dominating." That was new. Then my son, Tyler, age 7, Lego obsessed, said, "Mommy says we're learning to advocate for ourselves." Again, not a bad thing, but it felt rehearsed. The cadence, the phrasing, like someone else's voice was echoing through my kids. I should have said something right then, but I let it go. I figured, okay, Janelle's been binging therapy TikTok again. So what? Maybe she's finally working on her stuff. It wasn't until the 3rd week that I saw the footage. I'd gone to the house to pick up Tyler's stuffed shark, the one with the ripped fin he couldn't sleep without. Janelle wasn't home. Her car was gone. I still had a key. We hadn't bothered to change locks. While I searched the playroom, I noticed her laptop open on the dining table, screen dim but still on. A folder labeled Confessional B-roll/coaching was open in the video player. I didn't mean to click it. I didn't. But I did. And what I saw made my stomach twist. There was Janelle, in full glam makeup, sitting on the edge of the couch with Emily and Tyler seated on stools in front of her, like she was directing a commercial. She clapped her hands once, sharp. "Okay, let's try that again. Ty, remember, Dad doesn't really understand us. Can you say it like you mean it?" Tyler nodded, voice small. "Daddy doesn't really understand us." "Great. Your turn." Emily's voice was steady, confident. "When I'm with Mom, I feel like I can be myself. When I'm with Dad, it's like I'm walking on eggshells." Janelle beamed. "Perfect." The file ended with her saying, "This is gold. If we time this right, the edit will build the arc just before the challenges start." The edit. The arc. My kids weren't just being filmed. They were being scripted. And I was the villain in their story. I sat in her kitchen, alone, for 10 whole minutes. Not moving. Not blinking. Because I wasn't just angry. I was broken. How do you fight back against something like that? How do you correct the record without looking defensive? I tried confronting her civilly, later that week, when I dropped the kids off. "You coached them," I said. "You told them what to say. That's not parenting, Janelle. That's PR." She didn't deny it. She just gave me that look. The one with the too long smile. "Ben," she said, "reality TV is storytelling. And you're not exactly the protagonist here." That's when I knew. This wasn't about co-parenting. This was war. I called in a favor. See, I used to work in local broadcast before I switched to freelance editing. I knew a few people still floating around network development. One of them, a producer named Seth, had been in a hiring meeting for America's Perfect Parents. "They're scrambling for a wild card," he said. One of the couples dropped last minute. "What?" I didn't answer. I just sent him my audition tape the next day. It was short. Just me, my camera, and one line. "I'm not perfect, but I'm not fake. And I'm done letting someone else raise my kids on a script." Seth texted me 3 words. "You're in. Finale week." So I joined. As a late-season wildcard. The twist contestant. The real dad, with nothing to lose. America ate it up. Janelle's face when I walked onto the set. That was a moment I'll never forget. The camera didn't miss it either. She smiled like she was happy to see me. But her eyes told a different story. The second I stepped on that stage, I felt like a ghost in my own life. The lights were hot. The floor was polished, so bright it reflected the overhead rigging. Cameramen floated like vultures with steady cams. Every move was rehearsed, every beat blocked, except me. I was the twist, the wrinkle, the wild card, and I wasn't here to play fair. Janelle stood in the middle of the set, flanked by our kids. Emily looked confused. Tyler blinked up at me, like he wasn't sure if I was real. The host, a tanned, frozen smile TV personality named Chase Monroe, lit up like a Christmas tree. Well now, he beamed. Looks like we've got a little shake-up in the schedule, folks. Let's give a big perfect parents welcome to our surprise contestant, Ben Riley. The crowd gasped. Janelle's hand tightened on Emily's shoulder. I stepped up to my mark and offered a polite nod. I could feel 30 million people watching from their living rooms. But I wasn't sweating, because I didn't come here to be liked. I came here to be seen. Ben, Chase said, sliding into his mark like he was auditioning for a toothpaste commercial. You've been a quiet part of this story for a while now. Why the sudden decision to join? I kept my tone calm, honest, deliberate. I wasn't planning to, I said. But watching from the sidelines, I started to feel like the version of me that was being shown, that my kids were being told about, wasn't the truth. The crowd murmured. Janelle's expression didn't move. And now? Chase asked. I looked over at Emily, then at Tyler. Now I want to show them who their dad actually is. That first day of challenges was a whirlwind. We were dropped into a series of tasks designed to test co-parenting under pressure. It was part game show, part family therapy, and part emotional landmine. Think, building a treehouse together while narrating your greatest co-parenting win, or cooking a meal for your kids with ingredients they picked, blindfolded. Janelle was good. Too good. Everything she did came with a perfectly timed talking point. We believe in autonomy. We use emotions as data. We don't discipline, we dialogue. It was like watching a TED Talk parent. Me? I just tried to be myself. When Tyler panicked during the baking challenge because he forgot the eggs, I didn't tell him it was okay. I sat down on the floor next to him and said, I panic when I mess up, too. Want a problem solved together? He nodded. And we fixed it. Not for the cameras. For real. Later, in the confessional booth, a tiny, windowless space with a single ring light and a lav mic, one of the producers asked me, Do you think you're winning? I laughed. I don't even know what that means, I said. I'm not here to win. I'm here so my kids remember who I really am, not who they were told I was. The producer leaned forward, voice quiet. Ben, off the record. Janelle's been running circles around everyone all season. The audience loved her. Until you walked in. Something changed. I raised an eyebrow. She built a perfect image, I said. I just stepped in and breathed. By midweek, the cracks in her mask started to show. In one challenge, who knows the kids best? I beat her by a mile. Favorite color, comfort toy, dream vacation, which friend made them cry last year? I nailed them all. Emily smiled, genuinely, for the first time on camera. Janelle tried to brush it off with a quip. Well, I guess even the backup parent learns something eventually. It was meant to land light. It didn't. The audience was already starting to turn. Twitter lit up. Backup parent? Who says that? Ben knows their kids. Janelle knows the script. She's losing the room, and she knows it. The next night, she came to my trailer. She didn't knock. Just walked in like she still had keys to my life. You blindsided me, she said flatly. I turned off the mini coffee maker and met her eyes. Funny. That's what Tyler said when I picked him up last week, and he told me. Daddy, are you still mean all the time, or did you stop? She flinched. You weaponized their love, Janelle. She crossed her arms. Funny. You never mentioned that. The problem with liars is they always think they're smarter than they are. And Debbie, bless her heart, was no mastermind. She was just a woman bored enough, or selfish enough, to trade a lifetime of stability for a couple shots of Fireball and a mechanic with biceps. I didn't confront her. Not yet. That'd be too easy. Too emotional. I'm not looking for tears or explanations, or one of those fake, it just happened speeches. No, I wanted a finale. A showstopper. Something with impact. So I called Mathers. Said I wanted to throw one last cookout. A thank you bash for the whole department. Something casual, burgers, and beer in the backyard. He thought it was a great idea. Said he'd spread the word. Debbie was thrilled. Oh, that's so sweet, Rick. I'll help plan it. You're the hostess with the mostest, I said, grinning. I wasn't lying. She'd be hosting her own funeral, metaphorically speaking. All I had to do now was gather the kindling and wait for just the right spark. The funny thing about planning revenge is how normal it all feels. You expect it to be dramatic, some whirlwind of rage, blood pressure through the roof, maybe a few broken glasses and punched drywall. But that's not how it went. Not for me, anyway. Once I knew what Debbie was up to, once I stopped playing dumb and started really watching, it was like slipping into warm water. Calm, controlled, focused. I made a list. Not a metaphorical one, a real damn list. Wrote it on a notepad I kept in the glove box of my truck. Titled it Cookout. Underneath it, bullet points. Set a date. Get photos. Confirm receipts. Slideshow program. Invite Mathers. Invite Shelley. Invite Donnie. Act normal. That last one was the most important. Because Debbie was sharp in her own way. Not smart. Not really. But she had good instincts when it came to my moods. If I clammed up, she'd poke. If I started asking questions, she'd lie louder. No, the best way to make it work was to give her exactly what she wanted. A husband who never saw it coming. The next 2 weeks were uneventful. At least, that's how I made them look. I mowed the lawn. I grilled steaks. I asked about her sister's cat. We even went antiquing one Saturday, and I smiled the whole damn time as she held up ugly ceramic roosters and pretended they added character. Meanwhile, I was collecting. The first break came from Eddie. Eddie was a firefighter at Station 2, over in the next county. We'd done joint drills together a few years back. Nice guy, good with rope work. A little too chatty, but that was working in my favor. I ran into him at the gas station. Total accident. Rick, he shouted from the next pump over. Retired life treating you good? Can't complain, I said, walking over. We chatted. I made a point to mention Debbie. She's been keeping busy, I said. Still finds time to babysit all the boys down in the garage. Eddie laughed. Oh man, she and Donnie still an item? I froze, just for half a second. What's that now? Oh, you didn't know? He said, grinning like an idiot. I thought it was common knowledge. She was with him at that fireman's bash in March. Had his arm around her like he owned the place. I smiled slow. Was that the one in Tannersville? Yeah, Station 3 hosted. Open bar, bad DJ, whole thing. I figured they were a thing. Must have been some party, I said. You got any pictures from that night? Eddie pulled out his phone without hesitation. Flicked through a dozen blurry shots of drunk guys posing with foam hats and bad-shaped cookies. Then he stopped. Here. There they were. Debbie and Donnie. Not side by side. Not coincidentally caught in the same photo. No, this was posed. Debbie leaning in close, arm around his waist. Donnie grinning like he'd won the lottery, her hand resting just a little too low on his stomach. I texted it to myself. Thanked Eddie. Told him to take care. Next on my list was the bar receipts. Now, I'm no hacker, but I know how to sweet-talk a bartender. Murphy's Tavern isn't exactly Fort Knox. It's 2 pool tables, a wall of whiskey, and a guy named Carl who's been slinging drinks since Reagan was president. I waited until a Tuesday afternoon when it'd be quiet. Walked in, ordered a club soda, and slid a 20 across the counter. Carl, I said, I'm looking to win a bet with a buddy. He claims he saw my wife here a few times last month with some young guy. Donnie something, but I said no way. You got receipts or tabs from last month? He looked at the 20, took it, disappeared behind the bar, and came back with a paper folder. Donnie Fisher's a regular, he said. Taps his card. Leaves big tips. Usually comes in with the same woman. Brunette. Pretty. Wears a gold bracelet with a little flame charm. That bracelet was mine. I bought it for Debbie on our 20th anniversary. She said it reminded her of how strong we burned together. I should have known it was a premonition. Carl let me copy a few receipts. I took photos with my phone. Friday nights. Tuesday nights. Orders for 2. Drinks Debbie used to say were trashy. Next stop, tech. Now, I'm not a computer guy. Never was. But I've got a nephew who does video editing. I called him up, said I needed help putting together a funny slideshow for a retirement bash. Told him I had some old photos and a few voice clips I wanted stitched together. Nothing fancy. He said, sure, Uncle Rick. Just send me what you got. So I did. Photos from the bash. That one from Eddie. Screenshots of the bar tabs. A copy of the station roster showing Donnie's full name. I even recorded myself doing a fake toast on my phone. Took 3 takes before I got the tone just right. Cheerful with just a hint of acid. While I was at it, I slipped in a photo of Debbie on our 25th anniversary. She's smiling, holding up a glass of wine, looking right at me. My nephew asked, "Is this like satire?" I told him, "Kid, you'll get it when you see it play." The cookout was set for that Sunday. Forecast said mid-70s, partly cloudy, perfect for slow-cooked revenge with a side of potato salad. Debbie spent Saturday cleaning like the Pope was coming over. She rearranged the patio furniture, set up string lights, even made that lemon herb chicken she usually saves for Easter. "You sure you don't want me to make a speech?" she asked, grinning as she stirred marinade. I smiled. "You'll be the star, babe. Trust me." Sunday arrived. Noon sharp, guests started rolling in. Mathers, Shelley, the Probies, a few old-timers from Dispatch. Even Eddie showed up, wearing sunglasses and holding a 6-pack. And then, Donnie. He walked in like he owned the place. Aviators, tight jeans, that smug little mechanic smirk that made my fingers itch. He didn't know I knew. And that was the best part. Because when you hold the match, you don't have to rush. I let everyone eat first. Burgers, chips, beer. Laughter, small talk, back slaps. I floated like a ghost through my own backyard, greeting people, thanking them, clinking bottles. Then, dessert. I cleared my throat, clinked a fork against my beer bottle. "Hey folks," I said, loud enough to carry. "Thanks for coming. Means a lot to see all your faces here. Retirement's weird. It's like graduating from a life you can't retake. But I figure the best way to leave something behind is with a smile." They clapped. Debbie looked radiant. Donnie looked confused. "I put together a little slideshow," I said. "Just a few memories. Hope you enjoy." I clicked the remote. It started normal, baby photos, rookie year at the station, that one call where Mathers fell into a duck pond. People laughed. Debbie relaxed. Then came the switch. A shot of Murphy's Tavern. Then a receipt. Donnie's name. March 14th. 2 drinks. A fireball shot. Silence. Then the photo, Debbie and Donnie at the bash. Her arm around him. That look on her face. You could hear a pin drop. I played the voiceover. "Thanks to everyone who made this career so unforgettable. Even the ones who thought they were being sneaky. Thanks for the bar tabs. Thanks for the lies. And a special thank you to Donnie Fisher for giving new meaning to the phrase fire in the hole." A few people laughed, unsure. Mathers went pale. Shelley gasped. Donnie stood like a man who'd just realized his parachute was a backpack. Debbie? She didn't move. Just stared at the screen, mouth slightly open. And then I clicked one last slide. A quote, white text on black. "Nothing burns quite like betrayal." Fade to black. I raised my bottle. "To the truth," I said. Then I walked inside. I didn't look back. Not yet. Because the real fire was just starting to catch. You ever hear 25 people all try not to speak at the same time? That's what it sounded like the second the slideshow ended. The backyard turned into this weird vacuum where everyone's brain caught up about 2 seconds behind their eyes. Forks froze midair. Drinks went untouched. Nobody wanted to be the first to say something. Not because they didn't have anything to say, but because they didn't know what the hell was safe to say in a backyard where the host had just pulled the emotional equivalent of yanking the emergency brake on a school bus going 70. I stayed inside. Not because I was scared of the aftermath. Quite the opposite. I just wanted to let it steep. Like tea. Or gasoline. From the kitchen window, I had a perfect view of Debbie. She was frozen in front of the patio table, hands still gripping the back of a chair like it might hold her up. Donnie, bless his smooth-brained heart, looked like he was still trying to figure out if it was a prank. Poor kid probably thought he was on one of those gotcha YouTube channels. I half expected him to turn and wave to a hidden camera. Mathers sat down hard, like someone pulled his spine out. Shelley? She was already typing furiously on her phone. My guess? Group text explosion. "You will not believe what Rick just did." I sipped my beer and listened. Nothing but the wind chimes and the buzz of collective shame. Eventually, the murmurs started. Not whispers. No, whispers have dignity. These were the sounds people make when they want to say what the hell just happened, without committing to actually saying it. I gave it 5 minutes. 5 long, glorious minutes where I let everyone marinate in the slow realization that their nice little retirement party had just become a social crime scene. Then I stepped back outside. I didn't make a scene. No speech. No dramatic arm gestures. I just walked over to the patio, grabbed a paper plate, and served myself a scoop of potato salad like nothing had happened. That's when Debbie broke. She launched herself toward me, eyes wide, hands clenched like she wanted to shake an explanation out of me. Rick, what was that? I looked up, real calm. You saw it. Slideshow. That was, she glanced around. People were pretending not to look. You blindsided me. Like you blindsided our marriage. I took a bite of potato salad. Needs more mustard. Her face flushed red. But not the angry red. The guilty kind. The kind people get when their lies fall apart faster than they can spin new ones. It wasn't like that. No. I held up my phone. Tapped the screen. Want to hear Carl the bartender describe your bracelet again? Or should I play the recording of Eddie saying you and Donnie were getting cozy at the fireman's bash? She actually staggered back. Like I hit her with a blast of cold water. You recorded? Rick, how could you? How could I? I laughed. Loud enough that a few guests jumped. You climbed into a 26-year-old's truck and rode him like a rodeo prize. Debbie. I made a PowerPoint. Let's not pretend we're on equal footing here. Donnie finally found his voice. Hey man, he said, taking a step forward. I didn't know. I swear. You didn't know what? I asked. That she was married? Or that I'm not as dumb as I look? He raised his hands. Look, things got out of hand. She said you were, distant. She made it sound like. Stop talking, I said. Calm. Controlled. I'm trying to enjoy the buffet. He shut up. Good boy. Mathers chose that moment to stand. He looked about 10 years older than he had an hour ago. Probably because his firehouse's golden boy mechanic just got outed for nailing a co-worker's wife. Bad optics. Rick, he started. Maybe this isn't the time. Oh, I think it's exactly the time, I said. Besides, Chief, I figured you'd appreciate the theme. You know, transparency, accountability, the kind of values we plaster on the station walls. He didn't respond. Just adjusted his belt and muttered something to the guy next to him. Shelley approached Debbie, said something low and panicked. Debbie's response was a hiss. No. He's blowing this way out of proportion. It's not what he. But it was. Everyone knew it was. And then, the cherry on top. Mrs. Mathers, the chief's wife, arrived late, as usual. She walked into the backyard carrying a tray of deviled eggs, looking like a Midwestern hurricane in floral print. She took one look at Debbie, then at Donnie, then at me, and said, What the hell did I miss? Silence. For about half a beat. Then someone, maybe Shelley, whispered just loud enough. Everything. Mrs. Mathers narrowed her eyes. Why does Donnie look like he saw a ghost? I didn't have to answer. Because she was already marching toward him. And that's when it happened. Donnie, sweating, twitching, panicking, said something. Something quiet. But Mrs. Mathers stopped cold. Set the tray down. Took 2 steps back. And slapped him. Hard. It echoed. Like the end of a movie. The kind of slap you can't walk back from. And just like that, it wasn't about me and Debbie anymore. Apparently, Donnie wasn't just screwing around with my wife. He'd been helping Mrs. Mathers organize charity events too. Poor bastard. Couldn't keep his wrench in the toolbox if his life depended on it. The party broke up fast after that. Like rats off a sinking ship. People bolted. Plates left half-eaten. Someone actually took a beer to go. Not even subtle about it. Debbie tried to follow me into the house. I shut the door behind me. She knocked. Then pounded. Then yelled. You embarrassed me. In front of everyone. I opened the door. Looked her dead in the eyes. No, Deb. You embarrassed yourself. I just made sure the lighting was good. Then I shut it again. That night, I sat in my recliner and watched a baseball game I didn't care about. Debbie holed up in the guest room. Donnie, presumably, was out back somewhere collecting what little dignity he had left. The next morning, I made coffee and left her a note. Don't be here when I get back. And I didn't go far. Just down to Denny's. Had myself a grand slam and a newspaper and sat in that booth like a man with a clean slate. By the time I came back, she was gone. Most of her stuff too. Not all. She left a few things. A drawer full of scarves. A half-used bottle of conditioner. The ceramic rooster from our antique run, shattered in the trash. But her car was gone. Her keys were on the counter. And taped to the fridge, a letter. Sloppy handwriting. Tear stains. Apologies. Explanations. The usual garbage. I never meant to hurt you. It didn't feel real. I thought you didn't love me anymore. It just happened. No, Debbie. It didn't just happen. You planned it. You lied. You doubled down. And when you got caught, you played victim. So I left the letter where it was. I went to the garage, grabbed a trash bag, and started clearing her stuff out of the closets. Not angrily, just methodically, like sorting through old gear after a retirement. Useless equipment you don't need anymore. The house felt lighter by the hour. By sundown, it was just me and the dog and a grilled cheese sandwich. And a whole lot of peace. But peace is funny, because it never stays quiet for long. Especially when your revenge goes viral. Small towns have a memory like an elephant on steroids. They'll forget who paved Main Street, who won city council in '08, or that your uncle was caught pants down behind the bowling alley that one 4th of July. But when it comes to something juicy, something scandalous, like a married woman having an affair with the firehouse mechanic and her husband torching the truth in front of a crowd, that becomes legend. I knew word would spread. That was half the point. But I underestimated just how fast it would spread. And how far. Monday morning, I went to pick up coffee at the corner diner. Same place I'd gone for years. Mabel behind the counter didn't even ask my order, just handed me a to-go cup and said, "Heard you had quite the cookout, Rick." There was a glint in her eye. That, I know something, and I'm trying not to ask, but I'm absolutely asking. Look that every waitress in town perfects by the time they're 22. Food was a hit, I said. The entertainment? Even better. By the time I walked out, other people had nodded at me. One even clapped, like I'd scored a touchdown. And that's when it hit me. It wasn't just gossip anymore. It was content. Someone at the party, maybe Shelley, maybe Eddie, had filmed the slideshow. Or part of it. Or the reaction. I didn't know who. But by Tuesday morning, it was making the rounds on Facebook. I only found out because my nephew sent me a link with a bunch of crying laughing emojis. Uncle Rick made a PowerPoint of doom, he wrote. The video was grainy but clear enough. The transition slides. The bar receipts. The punchline. The quote. You could hear Debbie gasp. You could hear someone, I think Mathers, whisper, "Oh God." The comments were ruthless. This is Shakespearean. Bro made infidelity into a TED Talk. Tell me this isn't real. I need it to be real. Retirement party turned into a roast. I'm dead. By that afternoon, it had 30,000 views. By Thursday, it was over 100K. Someone made a meme. My face superimposed on a flamethrower with the caption, "He retired and then set everything on fire." The internet, as it turns out, loves petty justice. And me? I should have been smug. Triumphant. All according to plan, right? Except there's a funny thing about fire. Even when it's aimed at your enemy, it tends to spread. Let's start with Donnie. He tried to lay low for about 48 hours. Called out sick from the station. But when a fire truck needs repairs and your only mechanic is too embarrassed to show his face, people notice. Mathers tried to downplay it, said Donnie had the flu, some nonsense like that. But nobody was buying it. Then came the bigger blow, the city council meeting. Every month, the council reviews personnel issues, promotions, raises, complaints. This one just happened to include a routine vote to approve funding for new firehouse equipment. Guess who brought up Donnie's name? Shelley. She stood up, looked right at the council chair, and said, "I'd like to revisit the personnel file for our mechanic. Specifically, his conduct." Turns out Shelley's niece had applied for a dispatcher role at the station last year. Got turned down. Why? Limited openings. And yet, Donnie, fresh out of technical school, got in with a personal recommendation from the chief. The same chief whose wife, as we now knew, was also entangled with Donnie. It took about 10 seconds for the council to schedule an internal review. Mathers was pissed. He called me. "You could have come to me first," he growled. "Like Debbie came to me before screwing the junior wrench monkey?" I asked. Silence. Then he muttered, "This could cost us a lot. Should have thought about that before making the garage a damn dating app." He hung up. Next came Debbie. She didn't call. Not right away. She texted. First it was short. "Can we talk? Please. This is out of control." I ignored her. Not out of spite. Just principle. Then came the voicemail. Tearful. Sounding more confused than apologetic. "I didn't think it would explode like this. People are treating me like I'm some monster. I made a mistake, okay? One mistake. One mistake, Debbie. You weren't rounding up the wrong change at the register. You were playing mattress bingo with a kid who still calls frozen pizza dinner." Then came the public pivot. I got a message from Susan, a woman who runs the church's outreach committee. she said. Rick, I don't mean to intrude, but did you see what Debbie posted? I hadn't, but I looked. Debbie's Facebook post was 3 paragraphs of pure, grade A damage control. Some highlights. Marriage is hard. Sometimes people drift apart. We're all human, and humans make mistakes. I won't let one bad choice define me. It ended with, please be kind. You never know what someone is going through. The comments? Well, let's just say they didn't go the way she hoped. You didn't trip and fall into Donnie. Girl, you cheated on Rick, and now you're sad because the internet found out. Don't dish it if you can't take it. Rick is a legend. Someone posted a GIF of a dumpster on fire. She deleted the post within the hour. By Friday, her job found out. I wasn't involved. That's the truth. I didn't email anyone. But when your face starts showing up in viral TikToks under top 5 coldest husband comebacks, people notice. Debbie worked in marketing for a local insurance group. You know, image-conscious, family values, don't rock the boat kind of place. And when your most recent online legacy is being publicly exposed as a cheater during a retirement barbecue with witnesses, it doesn't pair well with Trust Our Agency. She got temporarily placed on leave, which, we all know, is HR code for, we're just waiting for you to quit. She called again. I let it ring. She texted, I've lost everything. Are you happy? That one made me pause. Not because I felt bad, but because I realized I hadn't felt anything since Sunday. No sadness, no triumph, no regret, just a weird, flat peace. It wasn't justice that made me calm. It was the fact that I finally knew who I was married to, and who I wasn't anymore. Later that night, I went down to Murphy's, sat at the bar. Carl nodded at me like I was a war hero. You started a wildfire, he said. I sipped my beer. Funny thing about fire, I told him. Once it's lit, it doesn't care who it burns. And as I looked around that bar, I realized something else. People respected me now, not out of fear, but because I didn't roll over. I didn't scream. I didn't grovel. I just exposed the truth and let it do the rest. That was never the plan, but it sure as hell worked out. There's this thing that happens after a forest fire. Once the smoke clears, the silence sets in. It's eerie, but it's also kind of beautiful. That's where I was now, somewhere between smolder and rebirth. The wreckage of my marriage lay behind me, torched publicly and spectacularly, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was walking around someone else's life. It was mine again. But like any good fire, sometimes the last embers flare up when you least expect it. 3 weeks after the cookout, just as the town was starting to get bored of my story, I got a certified letter in the mail. Debbie was filing for divorce. I laughed when I opened it. Not because I didn't see it coming, but because the cover letter said irreconcilable differences. That was her way of saying, you humiliated me in public and now I need to save face somehow. She could have just asked. I had no reason to contest it. Everything we owned was already in my name. House, truck, pension. The only joint thing left was a Costco membership, and she could have that. Lord knows she'd need the bulk wine section more than I would. Still, I called my lawyer just to be thorough. Dave Reynolds, been my guy for 20 years. Divorce, wills, property. The man's a walking fine print. He skimmed the letter, grunted, then said, she's asking for alimony. I blinked. Come again. She's citing financial hardship. Claims she's been blacklisted, can't get work in her field due to online harassment, etc. Let me get this straight, I said, setting my coffee down. She cheats on me, gets caught, tries to turn it into a sympathy tour that backfires, loses her job, and now I'm supposed to pay her for being bad at damage control. Dave sighed. That's about the size of it. Tell her she can go on OnlyFans, I muttered. She's already halfway there. Rick. I'm kidding. I wasn't kidding. Still, I agreed to a settlement. Not because I wanted to help her, let's be clear, but because dragging this out in court meant more drama, and I was tired of hearing my name in whispers every time I walked into the grocery store. We signed the papers 2 weeks later. Neutral ground. Her lawyer's office. She showed up dressed like someone who watched too many courtroom dramas. All black, pearls, sunglasses indoors. Like this was her villain origin story, and she wanted to be camera ready. I wore jeans and a flannel shirt. Because I'm me. And I'm free. We didn't say much. She didn't apologize. I didn't ask her to. The lawyers walked us through the boilerplate language. When it was my turn, I signed my name with the same kind of satisfaction you get when you take out the trash and hear the lid slam shut behind you. She hesitated with the pen. For a second, I thought she might say something. Cry. Plead. Try one last Hail Mary. But she just signed. And that was that. Walking out of that office felt less like closing a door and more like opening one. A few days later, I got a call from the station. It wasn't Mathers. It was the new interim chief, a woman named Lacey, who'd been on the force about 10 years and had her head screwed on straight. Just wanted to say thanks, she said. For what? For being the spark. That made me laugh. You're welcome, I think. She explained that Donnie had been let go. Official reason: professional misconduct and breach of ethics. In reality, nobody trusted him around a toolbox or their wives. Mathers stepped down voluntarily. Probably saw the writing on the wall. Rumor was he and Mrs. Mathers weren't even speaking. Not sure where that left their marriage, but frankly, I didn't care. I'd done my part. The rest was up to them. The department was going through a full policy overhaul: workplace boundaries, ethics training, conflict of interest disclosures. The kind of stuff they should have implemented years ago. All because of a backyard PowerPoint and a cheating spouse with bad taste in mechanics. Funny world. That Friday, I drove out to the lake. Hadn't been there in years. Took the dog. A couple beers. Sat on the dock and watched the sun drop behind the trees. No phones. No drama. Just the slow ripple of water and the occasional breeze. And for the first time in months, I didn't think about Debbie. Not the affair. Not the humiliation. Not the slideshow. I thought about the future. Not some grand reinvention. I'm not the type to move to Mexico and start painting sunsets. I just meant the real future. My future. Mornings that don't start with second-guessing someone's stories. Nights without the nagging sense that you're the only one showing up emotionally. Peace, not perfection. And then, just as I was cracking open my second beer, my phone buzzed. A text. Unknown number. I opened it. He cheated on me too. That's all it said. No name. No emojis. No context. Just that. I stared at it for a second. Smiled. Deleted it. Because I already knew who it was. And I didn't need confirmation. Debbie finally got what she gave me. Except no one threw Donnie a party. No slideshow. No roast. No flaming quote to remember it by. Just another sad, predictable ending to a story that should have never started. I leaned back on the dock, stretched out my legs, and let the silence have me. The fire was out, but the man who lit it? He finally got to breathe. Subscribe to the channel